how are people getting things loud, you're asking yourself? How do you get things loud? What's the secret technique that mastering engineers use? Well, it's gain staging a lot of the time. That's part of it. That's part of what we do as mastering engineers, is gain stage stuff. Now, what is gain staging? It's very simple. It doesn't have to be a complicated thing. It is basically turning things up as you go. So think of it as these are the stages, and you're adding level at each one of those stages. Now, that level doesn't necessarily have to be like as in gain, as in I'm going to turn this one up, then turn this one up. Sometimes you naturally turn things up by adding EQ, so then it kind of turns up in a curve. So for example, I always say I prefer to add EQ than to take away EQ, and one of those reasons is that if I can add an EQ and it's doing a nice curve, so really what I'm doing is turning it up, the sound, and I'm doing it in a nice way at the same time. I'm also getting some of the juice from that bit of equipment or plugin, so it's the kind of sound of that plus the sound of the EQ, and then I go on to my next bit of equipment. So what you're doing is you're chaining bits of stuff up. So say for example, you're coming in to your plugins or to your desk or however you're working, whether you're hybrid, totally analog, totally in the box. You're coming into all of your stuff at say -16. Don't quote me on these levels, but for example, you're trying to get to 0, okay? Let's say you're trying to get to 0. This will make it simple. So say we start at -10. So your first bit of equipment is adding 2 dB to the sound. The next bit of equipment is adding 4 dB to the sound. The next bit of equipment is adding another 3 dB to the sound. That's 9, and then something else adds another 1. So you're kind of gain staging through. But what you're doing is, for example, a compressor, you might be like putting a compressor on and it's bringing it down by 1 dB, but then really you might add 2 to it because it sounds good with a little bit on the output. So it's really knowing those plugins, knowing your hardware, and moving them around in the chain so that you know what works better as you're gain staging through. And the whole point of gain staging, from my experience, is that basically it's not letting one piece of equipment push the sound too hard. So for example, I wouldn't want to push a limiter too hard because then it's overworking it, and it's not, and it's going to sort of, you'll end up with a very crushed sound. It'll be loud, but it'll be very crushed. So by just building up slowly and having everything like working in ease and nothing's under pressure from like taking on too much load. For example, a compressor, I don't want to put loads in so it's really compressing it hard and getting, and just to try and get the level up so it sounds louder, or a clipper where it sounds really loud. It's like, yeah, great to use it, but just use a little bit of it and maybe use another one, or maybe use something else just to kind of build the sound up as you go. And sometimes you might need to, if you're only using one thing, then you might just go into that a little bit heavier, and that might gain stage it up by 2 dB, and then have something else that does say 3. You've got 5 already. So it's just that kind of thing. I hope you're getting what I'm saying. It's nothing too complicated. It's just working out what sounds better before and after each other, because you've got used to the sound of your stuff. This is why I always say, just for repetition purposes, so that it sinks in at some point, that what you're doing is you are just getting used to a few plugins or a few pieces of equipment so that you know them really well and you know the sound of them. Don't use crack plugins because you'll have too many of them. I couldn't care less if you crack a plugin. Couldn't care less. If you want to use crack plugins and your conscience is good with that, then cool. But use 2 crack plugins, not 1,000, because when you've got 1,000 sitting in front of you, then you're not going to use them and you're not going to learn them. So going back to my point is, you need to just learn a few things so you know that when it comes to gain staging, you know what sounds good before and after stuff, and you know what sounds good when it's pushed, and you know what sounds good when it's not pushed. And so it's like, that is how you know straight away and can work really quick and make quick decisions, which is what it's all about, to go boom, 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 big sound, loud, and I know it sounds good because I really know my equipment. So I hope you've got something out of that. That is gain staging. That's how we work as mastering engineers, building the sound up rather than just going bang into one bit of equipment. So I hope that's helped you. Don't forget to subscribe. Please subscribe. Please follow me, whatever you want to do. If you don't want to, then yeah, bye.